So as I began to think about oneness and speaking about that, and in fact, I actually have never given a talk on oneness before, and I think it's because I tend to push back against tag words like oneness and consciousness and quantum physics and quantum field and all that, because it just seems to me sometimes authors use those words to write books. And so I really didn't know exactly where to start, but this kind of felt like that I was going to jump into the deep end of a pool and there was no lifeguard around because I didn't really know where to start. So I thought about it and discarded a lot of things, but I finally realized that what I want to talk about today is the physical aspect of oneness, the spiritual aspect of oneness, and also the cultural aspect of oneness. I can get my hands and my mind around that, and I believe all of those are true. So let's start with the physical aspect of oneness, because for me, when I was a little boy, I loved being outside, and I have so many memories of laying in the grass, looking up at the stars, and we are all stardust, in fact, looking up at the stars and wondering what that was and how it got there and how I got here and all these other kind of existential questions that 6 and 8-year-old little boys probably shouldn't be asking, but I was. So I came away with the feeling that my understanding of oneness, as it is called today, didn't come from a church. It didn't come from us. It was from the stars at night and also staring up into the clouds during the daytime. I can remember asking myself, I was raised as an Episcopal, but I never accepted it very much, but I just wanted to light the candles during the service. That was my fun part. Was not a religious person at all. But I can remember looking up in the stars and in the sky and asking myself, can I see God? And can heaven be up there? Can heaven really on the other side of those clouds like sometimes they talk about at church? And my little skeptical mind said, no. This can't be true for me. It may be true for y'all, and I'm not trying to take that away from you, but it wasn't true for me in that moment, and it actually isn't true for me today. But in those years, I really didn't know anything about theology. I didn't know anything about metaphysics. As a matter of fact, I didn't know anything about religion or the nature of God whatsoever. But what I kind of really got in my mind, looking at, when you're out in a moonless night, you begin to realize this is a really big place. And I came to the conclusion that, a little bit like Carl Sagan actually, and I've used kind of his words, that I was a tiny dot on a tiny planet, on a tiny solar system, and a tinier galaxy in this infinite universe we call home. And somehow, I knew that if all that could be made, I had to be made by the same source of energy or thought connected with all of this, because I felt grounded when I was laying on the ground looking up, and it just felt like me. I began to think that if all the stars up there were made of stardust, and if the earth was made of stardust and I was made of stardust, then how can any of us think that we are separate? Everything in this room is made of stardust. Everything in this building is made of stardust. Every single molecule, just like Greg Tamlin knew in that kind of funny, quirky song. I realized that we must, at some point in my evolution, be living in an interconnected universe, whether we understand that or not, whether we believe it or not. Because truth is truth, whether we buy into it or not. It's kind of a funny thing. You can walk away from it, you can stay away from it, you can talk against it, but truth is truth. And there's a lot to be said for the interconnectedness of our world. So my first introduction to oneness, as it's now called, wasn't taught to me and it wasn't explained. It was just an intuitive understanding within the very depth of me, a young boy looking up into the stars. I remember those days so clearly, and I still look up into the stars every chance I get. I'm fascinated by it. So I came to believe that that we come all from the same source. We're expressions of the same source. And we're all made from the same stardust. So, if you believe that, how much more oneness can there be? The second part of my talk is on the spiritual aspects of oneness. And I've changed, that's a funny thing. I don't, because I've sort of rejected traditional religion so many times and at such a young age, I was never connected to that very much. But that's no longer the case. But as I grew older, I began to realize that the traditional definitions of God no longer fit me. Matter of fact, I was hearing that I was being taught about God, that there was a God who apparently lived up there somewhere, because that's where we point, that's where we think, that's sometimes where we pray, because we still somehow intrinsically know that's supposed to be where God lives, because we were taught that as children. I was taught about a God who rewarded and punished. I taught about a God who loved and condemned. And I was taught about a God who was sometimes loving and creative, and sometimes angry and destructive. As I lay there looking at the clouds flow by, I remember thinking many times, where was God in the clouds? Where was God in the storms? And when there were no clouds in the sky, where did God go? Confusing for a young person, and sometimes it's confusing for older people as well. Also remember them saying that in church that we're all made in the image and likeness of God. And of course, when you hear that, you are immediately transferring your body up to heaven again, and you're seeing God looks just like you. And yet in my small mind, I couldn't imagine that could be true, even as a young boy. That can't be true. Because I never saw God up there, and I looked. And when I was in an airplane, I looked down the clouds. Guess what? He wasn't there. I looked all over thinking he would pop up, but he did not do that. So I'm interested about people's evolution of God in a way, in a lot of different ways. And it's funny how, in a way, Christianity has evolved. But Jesus said quite clearly to him that God was spirit and truth. Jesus was telling the Hebrews at that time that God did not live on the mountain of Jerusalem. God did not live on the Sumerians' mountain, Mount Gershon. God was spirit and truth, and even more importantly, God was right here. Look inside. Heaven is inside. We should have listened to that, because that's the truth, deeply truth. One of my favorite people is a man named Origen of Alexandria in 200 AD. I think I skipped something. Just one second. Pardon me. I did. So, Jesus said God was spirit and truth. But when you go back 400 years earlier, you see Plato and Aristotle, and we spoke about this once before, spoke about God as the form of the good. The form of the good. Now, Plato and Aristotle were surrounded by a pantheon of gods at that time, Greek mythology, but they didn't buy into that. He came to believe that God had to be the form of good, not the forms of good, not multiple goods, but the form of the good. And when he was speaking about the good, he was talking about the nature of God. And that God is goodness itself. God is not good, but God is goodness itself. Wouldn't it be remarkable if we had remembered that for the next 2,500 years? God is goodness itself. Now, how hard is that to get your head around? God is goodness itself. I'm really connected to that. 600 years later, Origen of Alexandria spoke in 200 AD, pardon me, and he was also influenced by Plato, that he could not imagine that God could create anything that was not good. And he understood that good as the goodness itself. I find it also interesting that today the unity movement understands God differently once again. Within unity, God is not a person. It's not that person up on the cloud. God is not a personality that's going to pick winners and losers. God is not a gender filled with he's and she's. God is not a being with moods and preferences, and thank God for that. Because if he's upset with you, bad things are going to happen. And that's what the Bible told you all the time. I'm upset with you. I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to throw an earthquake on you. I'm going to whatever. That's not the God that I believe. So these are a lot of my personal opinions, but I would like to share them with you. I believe that God is divine mind or infinite intelligence, and that the Christ within unity represents our own higher power. It's not about Jesus specifically. It's about our own higher power. The Christ within you is the higher power in you. We also know that Jesus was right when he said the kingdom of heaven is within. That's what I believe. God is infinite love. And it's the energy that binds us, moves through us, and expresses as us. I believe God is infinite life, eternal, creative, and unfolding as each one of us. I can see that happening here in this community all the time. See, we are not separate from that infinite intelligence. Infinite intelligence sounds like it's way far away and we can't get our hands around it, but it's extraordinarily personable, because we are expressions of it, direct expressions of that intelligence, of however you want to think of it, but of that intelligence and that presence that is everywhere and in everything. We're individualized human beings. We are unique. We are eternal. And we were all born from the same source. And my personal belief is that each of us is a singular, eternal thought in the mind of God. An eternal thought in the mind of God. And that thought has to be created by energy just like us. When we have a thought, it doesn't start as a thought. It starts as energy within us, and out comes the thought. I believe that is exactly what the Bible meant when it said we were made in the image and likeness of God. God's energy, this infinite intelligence, created a thought of everything we see around us and every human being that has ever been. And that's why we're also an eternal thought in the mind of this God. So when I think about this like that, I don't think of oneness as a metaphor. I don't think oneness as is poetry. I don't think oneness is a philosophy. I think oneness is a reality, absolute reality. It is truth. It is spirit. And our oneness with this infinite mind that created us individually is truly who we are as human beings and spiritual beings. Now let's move on to the cultural aspects of oneness. Actually, fairly recently, I traveled to a Unity Village in June of 2025. And when I did, I went there for the annual convention. They have that in June every year. It's also when they ordain new ministers. This is part of what happened when I was ordained in 2022. I went there and, well, let's start here. Unity Village, most of you have never heard of Unity Village before. And so I want to just help you, give you an anchor to that, because if you haven't been there, you've really missed something quite amazing. So Perry, we're going to throw up a couple of pictures on the thing just to give you an anchor. When I talk about Unity Village, this is what it is. You'll recognize that young lady in the middle. Happens to be Marlene, my wife. And she is sitting out in front of some of the Mediterranean buildings. Unity Village is now on 1,200 acres Most of the buildings were built in the 20s, 30s, and 40s to the Mediterranean style, and it is a really beautiful place. Okay, let's run through the pictures real quick. More Mediterranean style buildings. The fountain. The fountain is the centerpiece of Unity Village. It runs right down the middle of all the structures. All the buildings are on both sides of the fountain, and it's absolutely a beautiful place. And hopefully we can go there someday together. I would love that. This is the largest labyrinth. Thank you. It wasn't the word I was thinking. This is, I think, the largest labyrinth in the United States. Is that right, Marlene? That's what I thought. Have to check my information. It's the largest labyrinth, and Marlene and I were there. This was open just a few years ago, and Marlene and I were there for its opening. It was really awesome. Okay. This tower you can see for a long, long time, long ways away. And so when you get close to Unity Village, you begin to feel home when you see the tower rise up out of the trees. It's beautiful. As the engineer in me loves this tower, because when it was originally built, the Rickert Fillmore, who was Charles Fillmore's oldest son, was an architect and an engineer and traveled to Europe to learn about architecture. He fell in love with Mediterranean-style architecture. He brought it back and built the Unity Village completely that way. For the fountain, it was originally run by hydraulics. He built this tower and put a gigantic tank of water up in the tower. And when they wanted to, just like Versailles, exactly like Versailles. And when they wanted to run the fountain, they opened a valve and boom, you had a fountain. Now, it only lasted for a while, but then you had to pump it back up there. It's a little more modern today, but that's one of the purposes of this tower on the campus. Okay. Next slide, please. These are two incredibly important people in my life and also in Marlene's life, I think. The woman on the left is Reverend Sandra Campbell. She's the executive director of the Unity's Urban Ministerial School, in which I was enrolled in and graduated. I did graduate. And when you graduate and then you're ordained, if you went through the urban school, you get a stole that looks just like this. If you go, there's two ways now to be a Unity minister, through the urban school and through what used to be called Unity Spiritual Institute. I'm not quite sure what that's called today. But when they're ordained, they get a white stole. But we got these really cool African stoles. Urban school was developed in 1986 because they wanted to try to make it possible for minority people to go through Unity's programs after work. Because Unity required you to live and stay at Unity Village forever and ever. But most people cannot do that. So the urban school was formed to expand our reach to a larger group of people, and I think it's a great thing to do. Sandra Campbell is just an incredible person. I hope you get to meet her sometimes. I've known her since 2018. And this other incredible woman is Reverend Thandi Nelingetwa. Thandi Nelingetwa. She is the senior minister of the Unity Center of Love and Light. Sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? Unity Center of Love and Light in Johannesburg, South Africa. This lady is, choked me up a little bit. This woman is quite an amazing person. I first met her when I was going through internship. We decided we had several options, and most people do things like make a little brochure or this or that, but we learned that Reverend Tandi's church was unable to produce new ministers, although she had many candidates, because they would sign up for a course, and by the time the books ever got to them, the course was over and over and over. They literally could not take classes. So our thought was, why not build this church a library of Unity textbooks? Now that's a pretty big undertaking. And it couldn't have happened without Marlene, my sweet wife back there, because she was a huge part of this undertaking, I will tell you. So that was myself and Marlene, and I think 7 other classmates took on this project, and we ended up sending about 430 textbooks to them. And now, actually, When I went there in June, I was going there because the first candidate from her church was being ordained on Monday. And chokes me up a little bit, but it's the first time I ever got to see Reverend Tondi face to face. All the other conversations have been by phone and email. She's an amazing person. After the ordination was over, Reverend Tondi led a workshop, which I decided to go to, and we can go to the next slide. There you go. She was leading a workshop about Ubuntu, and it's, as you'll find out, it's a South African way of living, okay? But rather than try to describe it, she came in front of us and she told a story, which I really loved. She said that there was an anthropologist working with a tribe in South Africa, and he'd been there for some while and decided that he wanted to learn a little bit more about the children in the tribe, so he gathered all the children together and was talking to them, and he had brought a basket of fruit. And he told them, I'm going to take this basket of fruit about 100 meters away, set it by the tree, and when I come back, I'm going to say, ready, set, go, and I want you to race down there to that basket, and the first person who gets the basket will get it all. He said, you all understand? They sort of did. So he said, ready, set, go. Except they didn't run. He was stunned because the miracle was, instead of running, they looked at each other, they grabbed hands, and they walked to the tree, and they sat down by the tree and began to pass the fruit out. The anthropologist, who's probably an American, was stunned by that. And he said, well, how come you didn't race down there to see who would win the basket? And it was one of those crickets moments because nobody said anything at all. They didn't know what to say. But finally, one of the children spoke up and said, well, how can one of us be happy if others are sad? That's pretty amazing. I think this story is a perfect example of what Ubuntu is in African culture. See, it's not a philosophy, it's not a theology, it's certainly not a religion. It is absolutely a way of life for most Africans. So when I heard this story from Reverend Tondi, I was kind of, in a way, I wouldn't say brokenhearted, but I was so touched by it because these little children understood deeply what community really means. And oftentimes we forget. But I also realized that what they really understood was that we rise together or we fail together. There is no other way for us but love. It's a pretty beautiful statement. When I think of this community, that's exactly what I think about people here as well. We rise together or we fail together, but there is no other way for us but love. So what I'd like to do, if you give me just a few more minutes, I'd like to encourage you to hold hands for the people next to you, if you would, everywhere. Maybe, Ann, if you could, that's right, I knew you would do that. Because it's one thing to talk about Ubuntu, but it's another thing to experience it. Really to experience it. And I would say that the heart of Ubuntu is the concept of I am because you are. You are because I am. We are because you are. That's what Ubuntu really means. So if you would, please just close your eyes for a few moments, and I want you to repeat after me what I say. I am because you are.
I am because you are.
You are because I am.
You are because I am.
We are because you are.
We are because you are.
We rise together.
We rise together.
Or we fall together.
Or we fall together.
You matter.
You matter.
You are appreciated. You are love. Now just as you open your eyes, just begin to kind of look around the room and feel the presence of that kind of love that we share together. That, my friends, is the beauty of this relationship. Thank you for allowing me to be here with you today. Thank you. So I love doing things differently, you know that. And so we're going to have a meditation now, but I'm going to use the meditation by reading a poem in a moment by James Dillett Freeman. And it's a pretty powerful poem. It was written at Unity Village. There's a prayer chapel, silent prayer chapel. It's the most spiritual place you could ever go. And when he was grieving over the potential of a lost loved one, he went to the chapel and meditated and prayed. And the words he wrote in his poem are the words he heard. So I invite you now to settle in. Both feet on the ground if you wish. Let your body soften. Let your breath become easy. And let your heart open just a little wider. Take a slow breath in and a long, gentle breath out. Take another slow breath in and a long, gentle breath out. Feel your shoulders begin to drop and relax. Let your minds quiet. And let your heart remember that you are love. I Am There by James Dillett Freeman. Do you need me? I am there. You cannot see me, yet I am the light you see by. You cannot hear me, yet I speak through your voice. You cannot feel me, yet I am the power at work in your hands. I am at work, though you do not understand my ways. I am at work, though you do not recognize my works. I am not strange visions, nor am I mysteries. And only in absolute stillness beyond self can you know me as I am. And then, but as a feeling and a faith, yet I am there, yet I am here, yet I answer. When you need me, I am here. Even as you deny me, I am there. Even when you feel most alone, I am there. Even in your fears, I am there. Even in your pain, I am there. I am there when you pray, and I am there when you do not pray. I am in you, and you are in me. Though your faith in me is unsure, my faith in you never wavers, because I know you, because I love you, and I am there. Let's take these thoughts and feelings into the silence now, and I will let you know when to come back. I promise I'll be right here. Now as you begin to come back into the room, you cannot see me, yet I am the light you see by. You cannot hear me, yet I speak through your voice. You cannot feel me, yet I am the power at work in your hands. And so it is. God bless.